Hello and welcome, guys. Welcome. Big thank you to Paris Liningstrom for joining me today. What we were going to do is we're going to continue our reviews of season 5 of Rick and Morty. So we did a show about the first episode and kind of gave a little bit of background about the show as a whole. But now we're going to concentrate and really condense down each particular episode. So big thank you for joining me.
Great, glad to be here. And boy, did we luck out. This is two good episodes in a row. That could have really, I was a little nervous about it because it certainly looks like they're going with a concept this season, a little red line running through it. So I enjoyed it.
I did also. I was surprised. And this, again, as I kind of pull up a few of the screenshots, it was a really fast moving episode. I think if somebody's not familiar with the show, this might actually throw them a little bit. Because it was a very almost irreverent episode. You think, well, what the heck is going on? Are we supposed to care about these characters? Are they disposable? Uh, but I actually
Absolutely.
really loved the idea of this.
It's a deep track. This is not the first one you want to show to somebody you're trying to win over with the show. That's for sure.
Hmm. What would you say was the strong point of this? I mean, obviously, there's an underlying story arc in this episode. Basically, it deals with clones,
Right.
and a lot of them.
And that's the whole concept, isn't it? It's that's where the sci-fi aspect's going to play in. Even Rick says, "Hey, 2/3 or right of sci-fi is clones, so we don't own that concept." But yeah, it's definitely playing into that, and I think it's part of that detachment, and it's also there again that kind of long string that's running through not just this season, obviously, but through the whole series, which is what Rick and Morty are we following? We know we've lost Rick and Morty in the past, and this episode plays very heavy into that because obviously every Rick, Morty, Beth, Jerry, and Summer you're seeing here is not the one you're attached to because they're gone pretty quick most of the time.
Yes, and I actually love this scene where he's trying to explain what's going on and the way that it just kind of cascades out. So you've got clones that making clones that don't know they're clones.
Yes, and that's I think that night, even though I knew it was 3 in the morning, I DM'd you and said, "Do not, do not Google rule as off Rule 34 because the
Exactly.
second and third thing comes to a really odd old flash porn site." I don't know if we could say that or not, but if we can't, get rid of it. Just don't do it, and certainly don't do it at work. But just the old whiteboard, I love it. What a great, not just television visual, but also the scientific visual of let's get the whiteboard out. It was very reminiscent of House and other shows too, where we go to the board to explain everything, and um, of course, Summer ends it with say clone again, which, which I
I think
thought
they
was
called them decoys, wasn't it? That was the word they kept saying rather than clone. But
yes, that's right.
absolutely, yeah,
Say decoy
decoy.
again. That's
Say
correct.
decoy again. Yeah.
And of course, that's the whole play on the episode, isn't it? Is that these are decoys that have made other decoys, because Rick obviously made the first batch of decoys to be as much like them as possible to attract any attention. And the obvious mistake that you're going to have is if you do create something enough in your image, they're going to do the things you're going to do. They're going to recreate um, clones of themselves to act as decoys. They're going to be untrusting. They're gonna feed into all the negative emotions that you have, and that's certainly what this episode's played into.
It really did. And again, there's this whole kind of sub thing with these squid aliens that turn out to be decoys, of course.
Which is that's the only part of the concept I didn't get, though I truly appreciate it. Is what was the whole point of dressing up as squids? Because not only were they dressed as squids, but the squid ships were very squid-like. I mean, they're very alien-looking, and I'm not sure that the decoys would have to go through that much of a deception to get it across, unless, of course, and that's the only thing I could come up with. To tell me if you weren't thinking the same thing, which was that first set that started going after everybody to get rid of the decoys, or the decoys that they didn't make, or that they didn't want them to know they're coming. So let's make them think we're aliens attacking. because it was a pretty heavy-handed.
It was. It got complicated, and I had to watch the episode a couple of times just to kind of grasp where they were going with this. I mean, you can just watch the episode and let it kind of flow over you and think, okay, this is just a standard sci-fi trope. You know, it's clones, it's decoys, it's you don't know who's the clone. Um, but they went so deep with this idea. It was
It
actually
did,
really,
and
really
of
funny.
course, there again, and I find it interesting. They're harkening back to last season. There were a lot of plays with Beth telling Rick, "Oh, well, you don't the clone jokes. You don't like having a duplicate of yourself, or it's not something that's comfortable, is it?" And at one point, um, I think it was the second family or third family,
Hmm.
where Rick said, "Look, I'm not gonna lose my mind and fall apart just because I find out I'm a clone. I'm not your mother." And she gives him a real hearty "fu," which is not always what Beth does. It takes a lot for Beth to get to that point. But they played a lot with it to the very end of that whole relationship of clone Beth that was 2 seasons ago and was the great finale of last season, and we played right
Hmm.
back into it all the way up into the end with Puppet and Beth and Puppet Rick and the family hiding and outfits that are too cute to be hunted.
Exactly. I love that. Would you say this was more of a Rick and Beth centric episode rather than a Rick and Morty episode? Because it was really for me about the relationship and the the troubles that the father and daughter had.
Without a doubt. And there again, a really weird, and I think you even told me this one yourself, another one where the whole family was involved to a great capacity. Summer had a little bit bigger of a part than she did last time, but still
Hmm.
not pivotal. So I'm assuming we're going to have a real summer centric one coming up soon. But very much the family involved, and yes, very much dealing with the father daughter issues that have been left unresolved over the seasons.
I also loved that as the episode came to a close, they were just really resigned to this. They were clearly just sick of this whole idea of having to take each other out, especially Summer.
Yes.
She it got to the point where she'd taken her own clone out, and Morty was fighting with his, and she's like, you know what, I'm out. You can sort this out between yourselves. I've just had to, take out my own clone.
Right. And I got to tell you, they got me with that one. There were only a couple times where I was like, okay, this is, once I saw what they were doing, where they were killing off duplicates and all, that last family, where, Summer cut herself, and it looked like they had won and everything. And it looked like they had taken on that last group, which was a genius play because I thought for sure, like, okay, they're obviously wanting us to think that the Rick with the big hologram is the real family. And then
Hmm.
once I saw the puppets take off their puppet outfits, then it's like, okay, obviously this is a family from the very beginning. So you really expected that to be the play. And wow, what a payoff because A, it wasn't, but B, it just goes to show you that they had really at that point just resigned themselves to like, which is funny because a lot of them did, right? The Rick who shot himself when he saw the other squid mobile pull up. I think, oh, where the dying Jerry throws out the photon grenade and Rick goes, it's probably for the best,
Yes.
So yes, I think they kind of figured out that they were kind of stuck in this whole thing, and that many of them had figured out, yeah, I'm obviously a duplicate. I'm obviously, here's a decoy.
Hmm. Absolutely. And we did have a end scene as well after the credits, which usually they have something to do with the show the next episode. But this one was just about what happened to one of the versions of Jerry. I actually thought it was
Yes.
really sad. So it's like the puppet version of Jerry that was actually a really cowardly character. Um, and it goes on his journey, and I thought it was really tragic what they did to him, even though he wasn't a nice character in this episode. um it was I was surprised.
You say sad and upsetting. I gotta tell you, I found it more disturbing than anything. I thought
Oh yes.
it was terrifying because it's so funny. He wanted to live, right? So he sacrifices his family, which they've always played on that, right? That
Hmm.
Jerry will hide and basically sacrifice other people to save himself, and he gets ultimately what he wants. And boy, is it not what he thought it would be. That he plays on, and obviously he lives on forever and ever. He's become this immortal character, and boy, was it unsettling.
It really was. It was a real kind of gut punch that they did, and I didn't hate it by any means, but I was very surprised that they went there and like we say, it's usually something to do with an upcoming episode, or it's just something completely random that
Yeah,
you'll never see ever again. But this one was
absolutely.
a continuation of an actual character, which
Right.
I quite liked.
It's about as dark as it gets.
Hmm.
That's for sure. And of course, we can't forget the final scene where we find out that the real family has been in space the whole time, and they get another callback where they find Space Beth,
Hmm.
who I guess we're supposed to believe now is the true clone, right? That she's accepted that and she's had in space, and they ran into her, and the big play of, and maybe we'll run into Space Beth even more, and she's like, "Don't count on it," which is great, and we probably won't see Space Beth for another season. So
Yes, that's all the space buff you're gonna get, even though people
that's right.
really like space buff. But they are really clever when they with these characters. They definitely know how to kind of tease the audience. It's like you say with the character that we had in the previous episode, his nemesis, Mr. Nimbus. You know, I've got a sneaking suspicion that you're correct, that we're probably not going to see him again for a while.
Right, and it's just an interesting play, but I got to give these guys credit. They always keep us guessing. It's not what we think it's going to be, and I got to tell you, I didn't think they would do that with this season. And are they going to do it? I don't know. It looks like they might have a real strong running theme throughout the entire season, and I've been impressed so far, and I've been a little surprised. We'll see. The little intro to the next episode, which is actually going to be on the 4th of July,
Nice.
is an interesting concept. It doesn't give us a lot, right? That could be just a section of the story, or is the whole story a play on Captain Planet, and it looks like Rick and Morty are on this planet where it's polluted and things like that, or is that just a little subsection of it? Or are we going to get a true just Rick and Morty episode? It'll be interesting to see.
It will. What would you give this episode out of 10?
Out of 10,
Mm-hmm.
strong, a little redundant. I did like the bookend of having Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted. So that was it. They get an extra point for that. I don't particularly like the character, but I thought it was a smart bookend. I'm gonna give, if I gave the last one a 9 and almost a 9.5, this one is a solid 8, without a doubt.
I'd agree with that. I'd give it a solid 8. I think it was a really good episode. It was a strong episode, but it wasn't an episode that you would recommend to somebody who's never seen the show before. Whereas the previous start of the season, I would say it's a pretty good jumping in point.
True. And even though it is one long joke, it's one brave and one funny long joke. And ups for that. You definitely get some credit from me for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this episode review with me today. Will you
Glad.
join me again next week and do episode 3?
I certainly will. I'll watch it and we'll get together and we'll do another one.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And
Thank
guys,
you.
thank you for watching. So until next time, massive, massive thank you to Perez for joining me. And we will see you guys soon.